Today is May 27th, and I'm Derek O'Shea, and this is the Derek O'Shea Show. Juan Williams exits the Fox 5. No, Juanie. To be fair, I could care less because I don't watch the show, but I know a lot of you do, so sorry? Or great? I don't know. I don't care. White House deputy, let's get to real news. White House deputy, press secretary, Karen Jean-Pierre refused to state on Wednesday if the Biden administration would punish China for the pandemic if it originated from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Of course, they're not going to punish them. Maybe they'll slap some sanctions, but also, to be fair, you're not going to come out and say that immediately before the investigation's over, or if we ever do anything, probably we won't do anything. We'll hope this story gets pushed under the rug like Anthony Cuomo. You know, it's like sexual allegations, push that under. He's doing such a great job with the COVID. Killing grandma, push that under. Just forget about it. But to be fair, you're not going to say anything on the spot like that before even an investigation has started, but you also know they're not going to do anything even if that, because China owns us, just like at John Cena. John Cena said that Taiwan is a country and now has to apologize. So when you know China owns you. And even Karine Jean-Pierre went as far to say the Biden administration has not ruled out the possibility that the pandemic could have been deliberate. You're not allowed to say that. You're going to get banned on YouTube. Again, YouTube, I'm just letting you know, that's what the press secretary said, not me. I know we all think it. We're not allowed to. It's okay to think these things in our head as long as you don't say them out loud, because then that might become true. But she just came out and said it. That's incredible. China immediately denounced U.S. efforts to further investigate whether COVID-19 came from the Chinese lab. Hey, you guys. We already did an investigation for you with the incredible nonpartisan group, WHO. They came out. Yes, we vetted some of their scientists. We did that. So sue us. But they're already pushing back. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry accused the United States of political manipulation and blame shifting. Hey, these guys are just doing political manipulation and blame shifting. Remember last year when it was racist to call this the Chinese virus? Go back to that. Go back to saying it's like harmful to blame us for the virus. Don't go to accusing us, because then we might come down to what actually happened. Remember the pangolins? It's the pangolins. So those Chinese people in the wet market, they're the ones eating the pangolins and getting you COVID. Be mad at them. Don't be mad at the government or Institute of Virology or Dr. Fauci. They're great people. Oh, China. Will we get down to the bottom of this? I'm going to say probably not. Will questions continue to rise? Yes, because there are more news agencies, even on the liberal side, that are questioning this, because now it's okay to talk about. And this is why they always want to shut down speech, guys, because if you're allowed to talk about things, things can get found out whether they're true or false. And when you're told that, hey, that's hate speech, or hey, you're using the wrong pronouns, or hey, you're saying the wrong things, or hey, we had to edit this because it's offensive, that's when they control the narrative. But now that the narrative has been allowed to be freed from, and now people are allowed to say things like, did the lab leak happen? Now is where science actually happens, and the science community can be science and actually find out what happened. But again, they don't want this, because then it doesn't. They're not able to control you and how you speak and what you say online and how information is passed, because they want to be the gatekeepers of all information. So it's just a bigger ploy, which I find more interesting, of the cultural society role in which information is allowed and disallowed via Facebook, because that's the main way a lot of us communicate, is through social media now these days, less on the phone, especially new information is spread. And so that's why it's such a big deal. I know some of these liberals or my liberal friends are just like, just leave the private companies alone. These aren't private companies. They're manipulating and fortifying elections. That's a huge deal. They're not the local gym down the street. They're not the same thing. My local gym, it isn't testifying in front of Congress for censorship or taking down stuff. So that is the liberal side of me, is that I believe they should be regulated. Fight me, talk to me about it. I know it's a slippery slope, but I also do not think they're a private company. I don't think that's the same thing. Just go start your own. Oh, yeah, you can't because we own all the servers? Sorry, Parler. You're going to come up with a new plan. Speaking of new plan, Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warned during a Fox News town hall with Sean Hannity last night that the impacts of the states keeping kids out of schools during the pandemic will last years and cause some kids to lose their futures. Absolutely. This is not a crazy statement. A lot of kids, high school athletes who have dreams to go to play in D1 schools or stuff like that, they've lost a whole year of playing their sport. And in brain development and physical development, that's a big deal. Yeah, they could have been working out, but even the gyms were closed during that time. So a lot of athletes, their lives were completely ruined in a sense, and no one cares about those kids. I do. I think it's a huge deal, and I hated it. I hated the fact that the gyms were closed. I was the only one working out with my stupid bands in front of the gym, wishing I could get in. And Ron DeSantis went on to say, well, I think it's been probably the biggest mistake, tragedy, locking these kids out of school. DeSantis said about the governors who kept the kids out of schools, he said, they're not following the science. This is politics and ideology, and quite frankly, it's a disgrace. Yes, just like I said earlier before, it's about controlling the narrative. It's about the politicization of COVID-19. And the reason it was so politicized is because they hated Donald Trump so much, they wanted to do anything to get him out of power. That's why even while you were watching a summer full of riots, they were like, hey, it's peaceful protest, and it's against these white racists. Remember that when you go to vote. And go vote for the oldest white guy that's that's ever been recorded. But hey, don't look at him. Just look at the vice president. Remember? I know she locked up a lot of black guys for smoking weed and then laughed about smoking weed in a conference. But hey, remember, she's biracial, so that's incredible. And we're just going to celebrate that. We don't celebrate, things people do anymore. We just celebrate what they look like and what they say. Because that's what it's all about in today's world. Hey, you can be a child rapist as long as you say the right things and donate to the Democratic Party. COVID-19 was so politicized, and there was only a few people that were talking up about it, a lot of conservatives, and yes, and a lot of honest liberals were talking about it. And I remember like Eric Weinstein, Bert Weinstein, some of the big liberal think tank guys, they were questioning the origins of the Wuhan immediately because they're real scientists. Only an idiot would just accept things China says as face value. Ask China about Uyghur Muslims. See what they say. Do you think they're going to be honest? Ask China about Hong Kong. Do you think they're going to be honest? Ask China about Taiwan. Are you guys going to do anything about Taiwan? No, we're doing fine. Yes, we're expanding our bases across the Pacific, but don't worry. Hey, Mark Lamont Hill, with critical race critic, not me, though you could add me on there, named Christopher Rufo. Shout out to Chris Rufo. He was also on Tucker last night, but on the Lamont Hill show, Mark Lamont asked, if you're saying whiteness is being constructed as negative, and to be fair, I'm going to stop his statement right there. He's not saying it. He's just reading it, and he's also seeing it everywhere and feeling it and hearing it. So it's not just Christopher Rufo thinking it or constructing this idea in his own head. That's like such a weird, even that statement alone is very weird. It's like a serial killer or like an abuser is like, where did you come up with this idea? And they're like, you. They're like, no, I would never say that. I just want to hit you. I'm not going to. I just want to. It's such a weird. If you're saying whiteness is being constructed as negative, if you're Mark, if you are so blind and can't comprehend how to, like, when you read something in critical race theory about, about these things, then you can't argue with people who will read the same statement as you and come up with a completely different conclusion. And that's what they want. That's how they win the culture war, is when we're arguing over words instead of just accepting what is truth based on words we all agree on, so we can have a conversation with each other. But okay, Mark Lamont says, if your whiteness is being constructed as negative and it shouldn't be, if you're saying whiteness and it shouldn't be, do you not believe that either? Mark goes on to say, name something positive you like about being white. And Chris, to be fair, I love that he rejected that statement. He says, name something positive you like being about white. There's a major difference culturally going on, especially, I would even say more conservatives, but maybe more white conservatives, is that we don't see things through the lens of race. Whereas Mark Lamont looks everything through the lens of race. And I just took a course on multiculturalism not too long ago for my master's, and everything was shoved down my throat, but I was like, no, I'm just rejecting the premise. Rejecting, because Mark believes that everything is seen through the lens of race, and that we all see race, and we have to acknowledge it first in a person. Like, if I go up to another black person, I have to acknowledge he is black or she is black before I have a conversation, because we're going to talk differently or speak differently or have a lens of culture differently than than me talking to another white person, as opposed to just looking at everyone as different and then finding out what similarities you have between each other and seeing if you could be friends based on similarities, not based on, hey, you're black, so we have to deal with, like, if I have a black friend, I have to deal with his blackness and my whiteness before we can even engage in a conversation. That's what they believe. How is that unifying? It's not. And so even that statement, name something positive about being white, I would reject it too. Because I'm not looking through the lens of my whiteness all the time. I will say something positive about being American. I'm not going to say something positive about being... That's such a weird statement. That's like even saying, name something positive about being black. That shouldn't be a thing. It should be, name something positive about being a human, about being a Christian, about being a conservative, about being a liberal, about being... whatever you do, a teacher. Those things should define you more than my whiteness or my blackness. If I focus on my race, I'm only going to look through the lens of everything through race, and I'm going to assume everything is racist. Why? Because I'm so focused on racism and race that I become racist, as opposed to the opposite of me focusing on what a person does, their characteristics, their character, things that they say, things that they do. I should be focused on those things, not focused on, hey, are you white? Are you black? Are you brown? Are you Asian? I don't understand how Mark Lamont doesn't see that as a stupid question. And I guess it makes sense because he does subscribe to critical race theory. I mean, obviously, the fact that he would even have that forethought and conversation makes sense. Christopher Rufo also went on Tucker last night, breaking a story about Lockheed Martin. Freaking Lockheed Martin, forced 13 top executives, including a 3-star general, to complete a 3-day Zoom course to unlearn their white male privilege. And Mark Lamont says, oh, how's that racist? You do have it. Oh, Lockheed Martin, huh? It's everywhere, people. I'm telling you, you have to be ready to have a conversation about this if you disagree with this. You can't be like some of my friends who go, I'm just going to turn off the news and I'm not going to even think about it because it's just too stressful. I get it is very stressful, but it's also what life is. It's real life. And if you have kids, it's going to affect your kids more than you because they're going to get and learn about it all through school. And you're just going to sit there and not know how to engage with your kids anymore or engage with your teachers or people around you that believe this stuff because you're so focused on, the news is too stressful for me to listen to. Keep learning about critical race theory. If you reject it, learn about it even more because you're going to be called to know facts and know how to argue it more than somebody who actually prescribes to critical race theory. A lot of it's based on emotion and assumed racism. And if you don't agree with that, fight back. Shout out to Christopher Rufo. I wish I could have you on the show, man. You're incredible. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and calling it out because I don't care. It's racism. If I believe it's racist, I believe critical race theory is racism, so I'm going to keep calling it that. If I believe something to be racist, I think that's a huge problem. Wouldn't you say so yourself? They would call me racist for calling that racist, which is, again, the minute somebody calls another person racist as opposed to just engaging in conversation, they're losing the argument, and they already know it. Yes. New reports surfaced late Monday that alleged the records from a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden. Remember that? Hey, shut that up. Don't talk about that story. Records belonging on a laptop to Hunter Biden, son of President Joe Biden, in case you forgot, media, appeared to show that Joe Biden met with foreign business associates and his son while he was vice president in the Obama administration. Who cares? No one cares. Double standard is whatever. Joe Biden reportedly met with his son's business associates from Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan at dinner in Washington, D.C. on April 16th, 2015. The New York Post reported, and this is from the emails, the next day, Hunter received an email from Vadim Porashki, an executive of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, to thank him for introducing him to his father, saying, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together." Polashki wrote on April 17th, 2015, It's realty and an realty. When you read a quote from another language, it's never always the best. It's really an honor and pleasure. At the time, Burisma was paying Hunter Biden $83,000, $333 a month to sit on the board. God, I wish I could be paid that to sit. But, this story will go under. Don't worry about it. Another Hunter Biden. He's a drug addict. We're not going to talk about it. Yes, his dad was involved with it, but let's not forget out. It's just a big guy. It's just a big guy. No conflict of interest there whatsoever. Oh, Russia wants a pipeline. Give it to him. David Chipman, a gun control advocate who is the Democratic President Joe Biden's nominee to be director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, known as ATF, that fantastic organization, told the United States Senate on Wednesday that if he is confirmed to the position, he will turn over the records related to the purchase of a firearm by Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. That's great, but he also said that he is in favor of banning the AR-15, and he concluded the AR-15 is anything over that is a semi-automatic rifle that shoots over a .22, so .223, .556, and so on. Any semi-automatic weapon that shoots larger than a .22. Just think about that. Again, gun control is not about safety. If it was, they would ban handguns. But they know they can't win on handguns mentally, but they can make you believe that AR-15s are the real problem. If it was about safety, they would take away sugar. because it kills way more people. But they won't because they're paid more by that. But they hate these rifles. They hate fearing their... they just don't want normal people to be armed. They just don't like that idea because it's harder to control those people. But at the same time, I don't understand why they would think that way, because there's a reason a lot of foreign governments do not invade America. It's because Americans, civilians, have a ton of guns. And again, I threw all my guns in the ocean a year ago. But yeah, David Chipman, a horrible human being, is going to be in charge of ATF. Yay. Biden's doing a great job. His approval rating is actually doing great, according to unnamed sources. Okay. Biden will announce a $6 trillion budget on Friday to push federal spending to the highest level since the World War II, as more fears of rapid inflation are sparked. Yes, you keep spending this money that we don't have. If you're in debt and you spend more money, does that help or make your future way, way worse? We're going in major debt, and liberals and some Republicans are going, hey, whatever. The U.S. is on track to run an annual deficit of $1.3 trillion. Spending would hit an $8.2 trillion in a decade. In a decade, spending $8.2 trillion. Public debt to stay above 100% of the GDP. And people wonder why people are in Bitcoin. I know people laugh about it that don't understand it, like some of my older friends, because it just doesn't make sense. But when you have spending like this, what do you think is going to happen to the dollar? Does it make it worth more money or less money? We're eventually going to be all paid a minimum wage of $1,000 an hour. And you're going to be able to buy, it's going to be like other foreign countries you go to where it's like, that's going to cost you $20 billion. And you're like, I don't have that money. And they're like, it's just a penny. You're like, okay. Republicans release a $928 billion counteroffer to Biden's $1.7 trillion infrastructure plan that rejects corporate tax hikes and unspent COVID relief, invests in roads and bridges. Hey, Republicans are like, hey, I know you want to spend 1.7. We'll spend $928 billion instead. It's a better offer. Just take it. I hate all these bills. All these bills are like 20,000 pages long, and they do not say what they're in. They're not, whatever is in the bill is not exactly what they say the bill is about. Just like the COVID-19 relief plan that Biden passed that was going to give only such a small percentage actually went to the American public. A lot of it went to everywhere else. I know a lot of people needed money, but there was also a lot that was just appeasing his constituents, as always. And that's what it's all about spending money. It's about, hey, I'm a Republican in power. All the Republican governors come to me, tell me what you need. Hey, I'm a Democrat in power. All the Democrats. It's just, we're just going to keep spending, and we think it's going to get better. And that's why they hate Bitcoin, and that's why they want to get rid of it, because they're like, hey, it takes people away from using the dollar, which is losing its value anyways. But by doing this, by putting your money in Bitcoin, you're essentially giving more confidence to Bitcoin than the dollar. So, and they hate that. Yesterday, a San Jose shooter gunned down 9 of his colleagues at a California rail yard and apparently talked about killing people at work for more than a decade, according to his wife. And Gavin Newsom came out and said, it's time to deal with this endemic before this pandemic of gun violence. Of course. If you always blame the tool used rather than the person or what actually the reason he might have done stuff like this, you're never going to fix the problem. Gavin Newsom doesn't have a category for evil. Evil persists. Evil is real. Evil will always, you can muffle it, you can mute it, but it'll always find a way through because we're human beings and we have the potential to be incredibly evil people. We're not robots. We have the potential to harm other people. You harm me, I'm gonna harm you back. There's always that potential of evil between us. The easy route in this argument is just to blame the guns. This guy had all these guns and he just kept looking at the guns every day and he was like, I need to use these things for evil. I don't think that's the case. I think this guy had a lot of mental issues and things, obviously a lot of anger towards his employees, probably a lot of anxiety and depression, and he needed, instead of us focusing on the fact that, hey, maybe this guy needed help, and the fact that his wife was like, hey, yeah, he's been talking about killing it. Like, what the what? Say something, man. But, you know, this story will get pushed more. Unlike the Colorado shooter, who was a Muslim guy, that got shut down real fast. But this guy fits the mold. The white guy going into work, shooting up people. It's very sad, and I hate the fact that it happened. And again, I hate it, and it's so sad and annoying. But this will get the attention it deserves, but other things should get the attention it deserves, like maybe that shootout you heard at George Floyd during his anniversary the other day. We won't talk about that, because that's the real epidemic, is in our inner cities. Black on black crime is the real thing that they should be talking about, especially a lot of these Democratic governors and mayors that are in charge of these cities. They should be talking about that because that's a real problem. I mean, I read off every week of how many people get shot in Chicago. I was like, I can't believe there's that many people left, because there's so many people getting shot all the time. That's the real problem, but they're not going to address that because it's about gun control more than it is about actually stopping crime. It's always been about taking people's liberties. It's not about actually stopping crime, because they don't care about crime as much, because even the DAs just let these people go that commit crimes. It just doesn't make any sense. Just like this, a suicidal man calls 911 in Texas and shoots 3 cops before barricading himself in his home for an 11-hour shootout. That won't be on the news because 3 cops were shot. That's different. A new story coming out. Miners in the United States who hoped President Joe Biden would support domestic production of critical minerals are reacting to his plan to ditch them and rely on countries including China for rare earth minerals. I've been saying this 100 billion times. I know Joe Biden and all these liberals want to go to green energy, but where do you think all this rare earth minerals are going to come from? Especially a lot of this, like the batteries, solar panels, they fade over time, so you're going to have to replace them. You can't they're not just going to, be sustainable forever. So we're going to have to get the rare earth minerals to build on this, especially if we want every single person to be driving with electric cars. So who's going to come to the task? It's going to be China, because they don't care about emissions. They don't have a standard. They don't force their companies. They don't cripple their companies that are producing emissions gas. So we're going to use them to build all these rare earth minerals, and then we're going to come in and build it and put it in our electric cars and say, see, look how green we are. We're not even thinking about all the crap that went on just to make it happen. Nobody thinks about that. Nobody thinks about the windmills and all these huge solar panels we want to stretch across the United States in order to build power. We're not going to think about all the devastation and destruction that causes just to make these things. Hey, don't talk about nuclear energy again. It just, all these unions that thought Joe Biden had his back, and remember that union guy getting in Joe Biden's face saying, hey, you said you're going to ban the AR-15. He said, I'm not going to ban the AR-15. Where'd you come up with that? He said, I saw it in a video. He said, no, you didn't see it, and you're a freaking liar. And then they went back and forth, and now he has an ATF guy that's in favor of banning the AR-15. Of course, these politicians lie to you. They wink at you. If you find they hate the internet because it forces them to be confronted with things they've said in the past. They can't just go on and say whatever they want to say in front of the crowd to appease the crowd at that time in order to get their votes, in order for them to stay in power. They hate the internet because the internet forces them to be honest about some things. But even the media will back them up and get rid of that information so then they can just say things however they feel in the moment. Like right now, the Wuhan lab leak theory is okay to talk about. The View was freaking talking about it, for God's sake. And they were pretending like they didn't play a part in this whole thing. Whatever. And today in history, in 1703, after winning access to the Baltic Sea through his victories in the Great Northern War, Tsar Peter the First founds the city of St. Petersburg as the new Russian capital. Dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. But to be fair, just another white guy coming to a land that he didn't own, and he's just going to put his name down, and he's going to say, I found this area. How ridiculous. Disgusting. As Russia says, you Americans are so weird with your critical race theory and your white male dominant privilege. It's ridiculous. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. I know this one went a little long, and I apologize. At the same time, I don't. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a fantastic day, and I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate the poop out of you. Please share this with all your friends and family. Tell them about the Derek O'Shea Show. Tell them about all the fantastic things we have going on at the show. I do silly things. I do serious things. It's a compilation of both. And again, I'm not a huge podcast. I'm just like you. So I hope you enjoy this. Please, let's make this into the biggest podcast in the whole world. Let's take over Joe Rogan. I believe. If you believe, I believe. Okay, I don't believe. Have a fantastic day. And as always, I'll see you on the next episode of the Derek O'Shea Show.